Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Dave Dobbs here. It's Friday the 20th of December. So it's a day before the solstice, and it's just coming up obviously to Christmas, and obviously Boxing Day, and I believe the new moon is going to fall on Boxing Day, so we can expect some pretty big things to happen. Now, I am driving now. I'm not going to touch the phone or anything. I've pulled over here. I'm just leaving the yard, and I've just pulled over here to set the camera up and that sort of stuff, because it's going to be a bit of a drive. And I've got some time. I'm doing a show tonight with Bobby and Steve, hopefully. We'd scheduled it last Friday for 7 o'clock, and I don't know what time it came out. I think there was a bit of a kind of like there ended up being about. We could have ended up going on actually about 7:30, but I'm thinking it's going to be about 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. GMT, but it might end up being 8 o'clock. But you have to excuse me, you have to check with what time Steve's scheduling the show for on his channel, because there's often a little bit of kind of like confusion with the time zones. So the reason I quite like making videos when I'm driving before I start off is because I can go into a bit of a free kind of thought, because I'm focusing on the road, and so I'm really just thinking out loud. But I want to talk about this is going to be a big warning on what's going to happen. What happens on the big alignment where we have the new moon. Remember what when we had just before the last new moon, we had earthquakes in where was it? It was in Eastern Europe anyway, and we certainly have one in Crete, but very near the Mediterranean, basically on that point. Now, of course, these are all points that are on that massive fault line that I talked about, the same fault line that went in 1986 on the 26th of April, when we had the big earthquake in Dharamsala that seemed so far away from certainly Ukraine. But of course, Ukraine sits just above the fault line that divides the Eurasian plate from the African plate, and that fault line runs all the way down. The earthquake happened up in Dharamsala, up in the Himalayas, and of course it ran all the way down there. And of course, these are the same fault lines that we're talking about now. This same fault line, Crete and I can't remember where it was now. I think it was Albania, but I'm not too sure exactly. But it was a 6.4 and a 6.1, and that was going to be effectively a month ago. 1 month and 1 day. And so we are considerably closer now to this January 20th, 30th kind of passing. Remember that the next new moon after this will be on the Chinese New Year's Day. And that's going to be around about our closest point that this thing will get to our planet, as far as I can see. Now, it could be that we've got one more cycle after this. But for Britain and for America, because you understand that you will all be jumping into this free trade deal. This whole thing's about this free trade deal that Trump, Farage, Boris, and all the others, this has all been the grand plan. The fact that I wrote a book about this and published it on the 20th of June 2012. But I'd got it together. I spent 6 hours every day for 4 years, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I did it for 4 years to dedicate myself to writing a book that fundamentally was saying, you approach a wall, you cannot take anything past this wall. I didn't know anything about Planet X. I would constantly kept asking that which I was working with, the energy that I was working with, what is the nature of this wall? What is the nature of this wall? And I was constantly told, just finish South America, as in finish the book of it that I was writing about South America, the process, the spiritual process that is occurring, that I tell through that journey. But of course, the fundamental thing, the backbone of that always was, do not leave Europe. That's what I was told for Britain. And for America, if you do a deal with Trump here, if Trump does a deal with, you think it seems so great for America at the moment that Canada hasn't lost a single case. The member state dispute system that it joined as a result of joining NAFTA, joining this free trade deal, which is now being called by in Britain by the pro-Brexiteers as a sorry, I've got a delivery guy that is just like looking possibly for Sam Shard. What are you looking for? Huh? Oh, shop? No, I don't know it. No, not down there. Definitely not down there. Could be. There's a place up there. Yeah, there's a place up there. They'll definitely know. That's more likely. It's not. Okay, so we're away. So when I'm driving a little bit less, because I have to focus on the road, and so you're just getting my thought narrative, not touching the phone, not breaking any rules, being careful. I'm just trying to think now. I've just been sort of like distracted by the delivery driver, because it's such a difficult place to find all the little lanes around here, and that sort of stuff is so difficult to find that everyone gets lost. So if you see a delivery, it's likely something for you or a mate of yours, and if you can direct them, then you've kind of like got a little bit of good karma. And good karma when it comes to parcels getting delivered is kind of a good thing around here. So I was talking about, I'm going to try and get my train of thought. I was talking about what will happen on Boxing Day, effectively. I don't know if it's going to happen on Boxing Day or the day before. It could be it was the day before last time. I cannot imagine it's going to be that much like a day before. The alignments are pretty much close. It's going to be as close to the. It could be this on Christmas Day. Though we have to accept that. And that's going to be it's going to be seismic across Europe. That whole fault line, and it's going to butt right up against. It's just going to carry on going, and it's going to hit right up against that. The big. There's a big fault line that's kind of like that basically splits from north to south, splits the Atlantic. And Dutch Since talks about this quite a bit, and how this fault line is like a really, in terms of earthquakes and such like. It's a brick wall. It's a brick wall. Nothing goes from one side to the other. It hits that wall and it goes up and down. So it hits that wall, it goes up to the North Pole, it goes down and splay out into sort of like cause kind of like ruptures up and down that line. But it won't go across to South America at that point, apparently. But obviously, if there's any big seismic activity, it's going to go up and down, so it's going to affect the Atlantic, not likely in various different ways. Because it's a ridge that just drops, or it's a crack or a fissure or whatever it is, but it goes deep. So everything that hits there can only go down. So it's going to go to the opposite sides of the globe, and vice versa, and stuff that comes up there is going to come up, and it's going to travel down those laterally. So that's not where the energy of earthquakes ultimately seems to be coming for Europe. Earthquakes in Europe are going to be coming via China and via where we just saw Crete and that sort of stuff, along that same line that caused Chernobyl on the 26th of April 1986, when we were seeing Halley's Comet. Guess what? We weren't really seeing, or that's what we weren't really seeing. We were seeing the same thing, the moon of Jupiter, just as we're seeing now. And all this is just a desperate attempt to force what's called a Passover, and Passovers are very, very rare. Oh, my car is telling me I've got to stop. I've got a brake fault. I've checked the brakes. The linings aren't bad, so I don't know if it's a sensor or anything else like that. So I've got to pull over in a minute anyway and just check the oil level of the brakes. Because there's no reason why they should be failing. But it could be could also be the ABS system is not kind of like a bit of a dirty ABS sensor. Who knows anyway, but it's under inspection anyway, constant process of observation and understanding. And this Passover they're trying to force is to blackmailing the gods that incarnate at the moment, and it is nothing short of God that incarnates within us, you know, in its broken down form and its souls, but it is aspects of what we would consider to be God. And there's another God that's knocking on the door of humanity that comes through in the realm of thought, and this is where our duality exists. What we think we are compared to who we truly are, the sentient beings that we truly are, that unfortunately have opened up a doorway to this other aspect that is running this earth through a thought-based narrative, and it operates the thought control by a system that we would call belief. And I'm imagining that this may not be the closest flyby, but the fact is that everything is falling to place exactly as I said it would in Laughing Gas, that this would be a massive divide, and that all this would be a massive attempt on Iran, as it is now. Or Europe's being footed, NATO's aligning itself, you know, the big Queen's meeting to align NATO members, and those who are willing to join a massive, great kind of offensive in the Straits of Hormuz, and to effectively take out Iran, or join this in this massive attack force that needs to be big enough to stop. And of course Europe has already said that they won't join, they will not be part of this, which is already angering, because this whole economic front is so much bigger. You see, once they're out, that's it. So this is their play, this is their last chance, their last hand. This is what they are going to do. They, to them, are winning all of this hands down, and they're on their way to the finish line, and they are. You see, this was all meant to be exactly as it is. And the process of me writing Laughing Gas was to make sure that when that moment comes on the 20th at the end of January, we will leave the EU, and that's the time when this thing is coming in. And of course what they are harvesting here is fear, and the most important aspect, guilt. When those monks aboard the ships in 1588 were aboard those ships, and everything, they believed that God was behind them. They were told by their own superiors that they were representing God, and God was going to be great with them, and they were going to punish the Protestants, the evil Protestants. So this was the whole of Spain came together, believing that they had the blessings of the Catholic Church to go to work. And of course, what was the greatest power at that point? It wasn't Italy and Rome. It was in the control of the belief. But of course, it was Rome, and the greatest threat to Rome, obviously, was Rome, and the greatest threat to the Catholic centre at that time was actually Spain. And Spain was led into going into the offensive, just like America and Britain is being led to go into the offensive now, at the worst possible time, when you cannot go to war, when you absolutely cannot go to war. And it is all the powers, the greatest powers, are just being led to go under the wheels of their own gods to drive this, because it is access into this earth. It's not about whether these beings live or die. It's who they embody. It's the souls they embody in this process. Those souls will be the incarnating souls for the next sequence. Those who you choose to be now. They will be in for the long game. And so this is all about the long game. And that's what the nature of this is. Well, those souls that are here and present in this will be the souls that incarnate and stay within this. You know, if we choose, whoever chooses to incarnate after the nuclear power stations rupture at the end of January, the ones we choose to rupture, this is humanity's choice to leave those rupturing and to go with this religious story, this Copernicus system story that we're in, that says that there's nothing near us, but just because of religious belief, that's the only thing that stops us from deactivating those nuclear power stations, is human choice and the belief systems that we have that this thing is not there, driven by a Catholic system. It was the Catholics that postulated the Copernicus system. They pushed this system, and it was the Catholics that suppressed the Galileo zodiac. It was the Catholics that pushed, you know, Hubble might have come up with the Hubble constant in 1929, but in 1927 it was a Catholic monk who postulated the Earth was expanding, the universe was expanding. I forget his name, but it's an unusual name as well. But it was a Catholic monk. 1927 it was. Oh man, sometimes I can say it. I've got to write that out more times. Generally, if I have to write things out, like I'm studying or something like that, to remember things, and I didn't write that out. I haven't written all that out way before I even knew about the Nibiru, and that, well, I don't even like calling it Nibiru anymore. I dread the word. I would just rather call it Bob and Connie, and because I just see now Nibiru as a massive great red herring. But also it's been a handy thing as well, because it's been mad. You know, you see in all the videos that we make now, the Wikipedia giving its bullshit rendition of sort of like its bullshit rendition of facts and everything else like that, and even the fact it puts about Nibiru is incorrect. You know, on the top of every video. You know what I mean? It's very controlled. You know, I never check any information. You know, if you were to use WikiLeaks as information in kind of like for a degree, you'd lose points for good reason. For good reason. Yeah, you get the kind of ballpark idea of some things, but it's much more there to distort and twist information than I can see it is for. Not always, but you know, too many people can get, too many other bodies can get into that information and change its essence. You can blind you from key aspects of information that have been deliberately obfuscated, as Steve Olsen would say. So I'm looking forward to seeing Steve tonight. Well, speaking with Steve and Bobby tonight. That's going to be good. So I want to talk about a little bit more about the process of what happens here, why this all happened, why all this happened, why I wrote Laughing Gas, why I actually said this whole situation would occur, and what's unfolding here. You know, what is this all about? And the big part about this is not going into guilt. The guilt is what they cultivate, the guilt and the fear and the blame. When you go into that desperate space, what have you done? You know that place when you've been led into doing something, and when you're really, really naughty, you do it, and then you get caught, and you feel so guilty and so bad, and it's like the end of the world when you're a little kid. These are the experiences that you experience when you are on the wrong side of the fence, when this thing goes by, because it's like your soul is being ripped away from you. Because it is literally being pulled, and it causes tremendous fear. It's causing right into the heart of it. You can feel it. Many of you will be feeling it now. A tremendous sadness building up in and around your heart. A desperate sadness. That's how you deal with that. In the breath, follow the breath down into your heart. Just keep coming back into the here and now of the breath, and rejoice that you are here now, that you can breathe into those lungs, that they are your lungs. They're your lungs. The mighty celebration that you possess those lungs to whatever capacity. Maybe you smoked all your life and all the rest of it. Maybe you're holding on with a thread, but you are here in this body right now, breathing into those lungs of life that surround your heart, that you are present here and now in the heart of the matter. Bingo! You're here now. You have choices now, however sad it feels. It's you that are here, that is here now. This hasn't happened yet. The big transition will happen. What is right for one is right for all. The transition will be equal and fair, and it will happen in the same moment for all. There'll be no lucky ones who get kind of, you know what I mean? Anyone who gets a peep show in this, the only peep shows that I've ever been afforded this was that I was prepared to go through a death experience. And so I had to go through that fear and that door. And many of you that work in the aspects that I work have had that similar death experience. It is part and parcel of this of not part and parcel, but is a big part. You know, you cannot go through to the other side without going through the door of death. That is the fundamental deal. What is right? That's the fundamental deal. Right through. What is right for one is right for all. And I've had a few death experiences, and I had to go through a few places where I've had to put my life on the line in these, as we all have, in various different ways and different forms. But sometimes you have to go consciously through that door of death, knowing the risks and everything else that you might not return, and your intentions and everything else like that. And all you have to do is track your intention in that. Just when you're at that terrifying door, even if you voted for this Brexit, remember when we go to leave and we leave the EU at the end of January, as we're so going to do, the fear as this thing comes in, people are going to go into blame and hate and all those stories. And it's through the doorway of blame and guilt. What have you done? What have you created? What have you brought about? And understand this was always going to be this way. I thought I could change this because I had to arrive at this place myself, to be at that juncture so I could track my intention. And realise when that moment came and that I could turn around and say, you did nothing. Did I do nothing? No. Did you do nothing? No. Even those of you who went for Brexit thinking you were led to believe that you were following the same. You listened to the people who were standing by for the sort of like for talking about sovereignty, and you listened to the people that were standing by going for sort of like Brexit. They were all following their understanding of what sovereignty is. You were so much misinformation and disinformation was fed into this. So many of you out there, when I was originally talking about kind of Planet X, how many of you when I first was talking about this in 2000 and thought it 14, 15 thought this was a total psyops, thought it was a total bullshit psyops thing that was just like these people were just working for the dark side to bring about, didn't believe it could be conceivably true. And now you see the type of seismology, the type of kind of like volcanism, the type of kind of like, you know, the all the climatic sort of stuff that we're seeing, all the kind of like, you know, all the gravitational anomalies that we're seeing. You know, you put it all together and you come up with just a massive X in the equation, don't you? You know there's something out there that's causing all of this. And if you go with the conspiracy theories, or they just always revert back to heart, because they go with heart because that's the consensus of most kind of like, that was the kind of 90s, 2010 kind of consensus of the something, wasn't it? For climatologists it was climate change, but for the conspiracy theorists, what was fed but never backed up with anything that proved it on any level was HARP. And so it was convenient conspiracy theory, just it was an X in the equation. And now we're becoming much more definitive about what the X in the equation is. And the X certainly isn't planet 10 or planet 9. It's much more likely planet number 1. The daddy, the real daddy in the equation that we've all been missing. Anyway, I can feel my things are about to go. My alarm's about to go off and say you're run out of data. So before I switch this off and call this a wrap, and see you later this evening, hopefully with Steve and Bobby on the WSO channel. Like I say, 7 p.m. at kind of like around about 7 p.m. at 7, maybe 8. But check on Steve's schedule, because last week I think it ended up coming at 8. But whatever it is, we're going to see then, and I'm going to see then. But I just want to just finish in case just by saying that in the Cobran Bible, you know, it says that when they came down from their hiding place, they had no memory of who they were, and their guides and gods were basically gone. They've been cut clean away. They chose new gods in their process, and that's what many are doing now. And it's not a bad thing. It was always going to be like this. This was the transit of a soul group that has been stranded on a planet that they destroyed, and they hadn't been able to incarnate for a long time, and they were savaged by those that pushed them to take their lives below the gradient that was sustainable for life, and they dragged their souls down that did not even know their souls did not even know they were present anymore. They just became the resonance of the desperate state of their last incarnations, their last living incarnations, and they died in those states, and those states were transformed into those states. And it's only when they've had near incarnations many times through humanity, being fed in through thought-based channels, hacked into humanity through electronically transmitted thought-based channels from Mars, where they died, believe it or not. The only planet that clearly had life on it. We can see it's right next to Earth. We can see the whole story. We can see where the water came from, the Great Flood from Mars. Where Will Thornhill will tell us it's a thunderbolt, just like he tells us everything on Mars is a thunderbolt, caused by a thunderbolt, even the volcanoes, and yet still he claims they're caused by thunderbolts, even though they spew ash. They look like volcanoes, and they act like volcanoes. Just like the Valles Marianas looks like the place where all the water on the planet drained out. Even though it doesn't make sense for us, it went down because we can't understand what a dimensional tear that the Catholics again are trying to instigate on our Earth with their Large Hadron Collider. All the same things, everything on Mars is what's played out on Earth. The whole transit. This has been the process of retrieving those souls that got trapped on Mars, that have been used and are used to break worlds. And so there's been so many souls that have come to Earth to oppose their agenda, but also bring those souls back into a living state where they can begin karmic transmutation, which you cannot do when you're not embodied. You're just stuck in this perpetual state, frozen in time and space, in this perpetual state of what they were, and just frozen and used, and that state is tapped into sentient living beings via these ego taps that they believe they are these narratives, and these narratives are used to break worlds. My recording is just coming up to 29 minutes. So remember, when they arrive, they will have no memory of who they were. They will be then operating whichever humans are chosen to, or humans have chosen them to be their guiding souls. Their souls will. That will be it. That will be it. That will be the process. And then they will become those beings. And this will be the first time. The last time, like all those monks aboard the Spanish Armada, they became those beings on Mars. They became their soul identities as ghosts on Mars. So they already have jumps. They've made many jumps. That's how I saw them, as these like ghosts of the Spanish Armada. That's what they looked like. I couldn't understand it. But this time it will be different. Those entire beings will come into Earth. They will no longer dwell in that space. This will be their birth. And so we've got 9 seconds left. So, this is the big process. All the love in the world. We're going to see you tonight, and maybe we're going to elaborate more. Take care. Bye-bye. Now, every bit that comes beyond this point, we are going off, is basically, I have no idea. The last time I did this, I can't touch my phone because I'm driving and I'd be breaking the law and I can get struck off. So basically, I got to run to the end of the video now. And then last time it ran off at just after 30 minutes. So I kind of raced to get to the end. So when it goes off in a shake, it goes off. And like I say, I can't, that's the only downside about having a kind of unpredictable kind of like time thing. And I don't want to sit here. But there's a point up here I could pull over in a shake. But I'm not going to edit this, so I might as well just keep talking until it runs out. So where I was going to go with that? Was those beings I saw on Mars, when I saw them on Mars. I was learning to do what I was doing on ayahuasca up in the mountains. I've been told I was going to write a book in this crazy adventure, which was the kind of journey of going to South America and turning it into a crazy book. But what I told my father, like I say, he was a channel, and he was the one who told me. I said, Dad, I'm going to write a book, and he said, "Aye, son," and I said, yeah. And he said, "Son, all I can tell you is you're not special." And oh no, I said to him, I said, "But I've got a funny feeling I've got to open the doors that you open, and I don't know how I'm going to open those doors. How do you open those doors? How do I just go and open those doors, Dad? How do I do that?" And he said to me, "All I can tell you, son, is you're not special." So many of you know this, but I try and repeat it because we're coming to that critical time now. So we're just constantly trying to do a summary to help you come into that space a little bit of navigating your own ship, navigating your own vessel, realizing you're here, realizing the power of you're here. That you might have these woes, but suddenly you remember you're the one who's here. Yippee! Get what I'm saying? You're getting the gist. Even though you're worrying that you might not be here right now, you are. Bingo! This is where you've got to keep bringing it back to, keep coming back to the power. Who's got the power? Who's the one who's here now? That's where you've got to keep bringing this back to. Not what you think you are, but who you really are right now. The one who's really, like the one who's here for me, holding the steering wheel, the one who might have all these stuff that's going on, but the one who's here now, present now, happening now, doing, being now. Who's that one? Great, it's probably going to carry on recording for the next hour, and it's going to be